If you are looking for the one model that perfectly encapsulates the true meaning of Mercedes' luxury, power, and menacing prestige, you have to stop and stare at the Mercedes-AMG GT 63 SE Performance. This incredibly long name isn't just for show. It is the title of a highly complex repair journey packed with immense financial and engineering risks. This is the story of a hybrid hyper-sedan that went from a salvage auction build bought for a fraction of its value, back to an absolute German monster roaring on the asphalt. The story kicks off when Matt Armstrong decided to buy this 2023 German beast from an auction for just $66,000. At first glance, it looked like a dream deal for a car with only 4,000 miles on the clock and a market value crossing $240,000. But behind that tempting price tag was a literal nightmare. The violent impact was concentrated heavily on the front right side, completely obliterating the wheel and crushing the inner wing chassis and suspension mounts. This triggered a surgical teardown to expose the damage, requiring the removal of the driver's door and side skirts just to reach the hidden bolts under the plastic trims. It was then that Matt realized the front suspension was entirely snapped off, and even the massive brake disc was fatally cracked. The real challenge wasn't stripping the exterior bodywork, but dealing with the complex air suspension and the absolute web of electronics surrounding it. After disconnecting the wiring harnesses and pulling out the strut, the true extent of the carnage inside the engine bay became clear. The right headlight was shattered, and the active electronic grille shutters, which opened to cool the massive engine, were completely smashed, a component notorious for its astronomical price tag. As the teardown pushed deeper, it was clear that the radiator and the intercooler behind it were heavily warped, and the radiator core support frame had completely lost its factory alignment. There was no choice left but to cut an entire section of the mangled inner chassis right at the factory spot welds to prep for welding a brand new structural piece. Before cutting and welding could begin, the biggest roadblock of dealing with modern hybrid performance cars reared its head. The car houses a massive high-voltage inverter responsible for converting DC to AC power for the electric motor, which meant carefully disconnecting its cooling lines and wrapping the lethal high-voltage orange cables in heavy insulation. Armed with a grinder and a spot weld drill bit, Matt meticulously drilled out every single factory spot weld one by one, separating the ruined metal from the chassis with a hammer. The real shock came when trying to mock up the new replacement panel. The sheer violence of the crash had pushed the structural firewall and inner wheel well back significantly. Matt had to rip out the interior floor carpets and pedals, using a heavy-duty hydraulic ram paired with constant heat torching to pull and push the metal back into spec. At this exact moment, Matt took a massive gamble that could have bricked the entire car permanently. The welding process required clamping the grounding cable directly to the aluminum chassis, and disconnecting the hybrid battery stack can completely lock out the car's ECU, requiring impossible factory-level reprogramming. After consulting welding fabrication experts who admitted they had welded crashed cars without disconnecting the 12-volt battery, but had never dared to try it on a hybrid hypercar, Matt decided to take the risk and began melting the new spot welds into place. Once the welding was wrapped up and ground down completely smooth, a fresh coat of weld-through primer was applied, followed by laying down structural seam sealer with a brush and spraying the area black to perfectly match the engine bay's factory finish. Assembling the front suspension was like putting together a terrifyingly expensive jigsaw puzzle, with the front suspension components alone racking up a bill of $29,000. The biggest financial gut punch was the price of a single brake rotor, which cost a staggering $6,700 because it was crafted from carbon ceramic matrix material. The flawless new disc was mounted, the massive multi-piston caliper was bolted down, and the electronic brake wear sensor was plugged in. With the arrival of fresh radiator support frames, condensers, and cooling units, the entire cooling stack was pre-assembled on the bench, complete with brand new replacement lines, before being dropped seamlessly into the front frame. The front crash bar was bolted down, and the automatic electronic grille shutters were locked in place behind the main bumper. After dumping 9 liters of high-performance oil into the dry sump system and bleeding the cooling circuits for the twin turbos and hybrid battery, the moment of truth arrived. A battery charger was hooked up to ensure proper voltage, and with the press of the start button, the twin turbocharged V8 engine fired up with an absolute roar inside the workshop. But the celebration was cut incredibly short. As soon as the engine idle settled, a terrifying electronic fault flashed on the dashboard, completely locking out the gas engine and forcing the car to run strictly on its electric motor. After hooking up the diagnostic scanner and clearing the code history, Matt tracked down a short circuit in the ambient outdoor temperature sensor and the mass airflow sensor, alongside a dead cell in the main 12-volt battery. A fresh battery replacement instantly solved the issue, allowing the Mercedes to fire up on all 8 cylinders normally. The final stage focused heavily on the cosmetics and aerodynamics to give this German hypercar its ultimate road presence. The new front bumper was fitted, and the entire car was prepped for a full satin matte black wrap to cover the original paint, requiring the removal of the door handles and interior door panels to ensure a seamless wrap installation. The advanced pedestrian safety mechanism was bolted into the front bumper, a clever system that automatically pops the hood hinges upward during an accident to cushion the impact. After one final electronic sweep via the OBD port to plug a loose floor pedal sensor back into its harness and bypassing a minor heads-up display error, the car went out on a flawless 2-hour road test. The Mercedes proved it was back stronger than ever, ending the epic build with the placement of the iconic V8 bi-turbo badge on the wing, sealing a massive flip that cost less than $40,000 in total parts.